When we talk about the power of emotional independence, we are really talking about one of the rarest qualities in a man. Most people live in a constant state of emotional hunger. They seek validation, they crave attention, and they move through life attaching themselves to others in hopes of filling the void inside them. This is why so many relationships turn toxic, because instead of being about love, they become about need. But a man who has mastered emotional independence is a completely different story. He is not driven by desperation. He does not enter relationships because he is incomplete. He enters them because he chooses to, and that makes all the difference. Think about it. The majority of conflicts in love are born from insecurity. Do you still love me? Are you still here?
Yeah.
Will you leave me? But the man who does not need anyone does not come to you with those questions. He is already rooted in himself. His self-worth is not borrowed. It is not dependent on how much attention you give him or how often you reassure him. He does not chase love as a way of validating his existence. Instead, he allows love to be something higher, something more sacred, a conscious decision, not an unconscious craving. And this is why he is love's biggest challenge. Because most people are used to relationships where emotional dependency plays the lead role, where someone stays not because they deeply admire or truly respect the other, but because they are afraid of being alone. Dependency is easy to manipulate. You can control a person who needs you. You can bend them, guilt them, even trap them. But when you encounter a man who is emotionally independent, none of these tactics work. He cannot be manipulated by fear of loss because he does not fear losing you. He has already faced his own solitude and made peace with it. This level of strength changes the entire dynamic of love. It means that if you want to be with him, you cannot offer him need, you must offer him value. You cannot win him with superficiality because he is not looking to be completed. He is already whole. And this is where the challenge begins to stand beside such a man. You must rise above neediness yourself. You must meet him on equal ground. Not as someone trying to fill a gap, but as someone bringing depth, truth, and growth into the relationship. And isn't that the essence of what real love should be? Not two broken halves clinging to each other out of fear, but two complete beings choosing to walk together because they elevate each other. That is the standard he sets, consciously or unconsciously. That is why his presence alone demands growth. So when you come across a man who does not need anyone, remember this. You are not there to rescue him, and he is not there to rescue you. You are there to build something higher, something free of chains. And if you cannot match that level of independence, you will mistake his strength for distance. But if you can rise to it, you will discover a love that is not based on need, but on truth. Attraction without dependency is where love reveals its truest form. Most people mistake dependency for passion. They confuse need with desire. They believe that holding on to someone tightly, being unable to function without them, is evidence of love. But in reality, that is not love. It is fear disguised as devotion. It is fear of being alone, fear of emptiness, fear of facing one's own reflection without the comfort of another's presence. And fear can never be the foundation of something as sacred as love. The man who does not need anyone exposes this truth in the most powerful way. Because when he loves, it cannot be mistaken for dependency. He is not with someone because he cannot live without them. He is with them because he chooses to be, and that is a far greater compliment. When you remove need from the equation, what remains is pure attraction, genuine respect, and authentic connection. It is not about filling a gap. It is about amplifying what already exists within him. This is why love with such a man feels different. It lacks the constant begging for attention, the unspoken pressure to prove your worth, the exhausting dance of reassurance. Instead, it thrives on something deeper, substance. You cannot hold his attention with empty words or surface-level gestures. You must bring depth to the table, depth of thought, depth of character, depth of spirit. Because he is not seeking comfort, he is seeking truth. And if there is no truth, he will simply walk away without hesitation. For many, this feels intimidating. Why? Because most people are conditioned to believe that relationships are sustained by dependency. That you stay because you cannot survive without the other. That drama and constant emotional bargaining are signs of passion. But when you encounter someone who is free from this dependency, you suddenly realize you cannot manipulate him with absence, you cannot threaten him with silence, and you cannot lure him with false promises. He does not need you to complete him. which means the only thing that can keep him there is the real essence of who you are. And that in itself is the challenge, because when someone does not stay out of need, you are forced to ask yourself, am I enough as I am? Am I bringing real value, real presence, real depth into this connection? It strips away the illusions, leaving only authenticity behind. This is why he is love's greatest test. He exposes whether what you are offering is real or just convenient. He will never cling to you out of weakness, which means if he chooses to hold your hand, it is because he truly sees something rare in you. That is not something to fear. It is something to rise up to. So when you meet a man who loves without dependency, understand this: he is not asking you to save him. And he is not with you because he cannot live without you. He is with you because he sees you. And when love is born from choice, not need, it becomes unshakable. Freedom is at the very core of his being. It is not a privilege granted by anyone, and it is not something he is willing to bargain away in exchange for comfort or companionship. For him, freedom is not simply the ability to walk away, it is the essence of his identity. He cannot breathe in a love that feels like a prison. He cannot thrive in a connection that demands he surrender his individuality in order to keep the relationship alive. And this is where he becomes love's most difficult challenge, because he forces you to recognize whether what you offer is growth or control. Most people enter relationships with a hidden expectation that the other person will adjust, bend, or sacrifice in order to prove their love. It might not be said aloud, but it shows in the small ways: expecting constant updates, demanding explanations for every action, imposing boundaries that suffocate instead of protect. Over time, this turns love into ownership and ownership into captivity. But the man who values his freedom cannot survive under such conditions. The moment love becomes a cage, he will step away, not out of anger, but out of principle. This is what makes him different. He does not fear solitude, he fears losing himself. And that is why he guards his freedom so fiercely. For him, love should never cost him his essence. It should not require him to cut off parts of who he is in order to maintain the bond. If you try to bind him with emotional chains, he will not fight. He will not argue. He will simply walk away because his freedom is non-negotiable. But here lies the paradox. It is precisely this refusal to be caged that makes his love so powerful when he does choose to stay. Think about it. If a man who values freedom above everything willingly gives you his time, his energy, and his loyalty, it is not because he has to. It is because he wants to. It is not because he cannot live without you. It is because he chooses not to live without you. That kind of commitment is infinitely stronger than any bond created out of dependency. And yet, this also requires something from you. You cannot expect to hold on to such a man with control. You cannot try to own him because ownership kills attraction. The only way to stand beside him is to honor his freedom as much as he honors yours. You must understand that love does not flourish in chains, it flourishes in choice. If you are secure enough within yourself, you will never feel threatened by his independence. Instead, you will see it as proof that he brings himself to you whole, unbroken, and unafraid. So remember this: when freedom is at the center of love, it does not weaken the bond, it strengthens it. Because then love is not about fear of losing, but about the joy of choosing. And when someone stays with you freely, when they could leave at any moment, you can be certain of one thing: they are truly there. Depth is where everything changes. Because when you meet a man who does not need anyone, you cannot survive on surface level gestures. The usual tactics that often work in relationships, flattery games, emotional highs and lows, carry no weight with him. He is not moved by shallow distractions, and he cannot be lured into a bond built on appearances. He looks past the surface, past the charm, past the performance, and if there is nothing deeper to hold on to, he simply will not engage. This is what makes him so difficult and yet so rare. Most people can be captured through illusion. A little attention, a little validation, the appearance of care, and they mistake it for love. But a man who has mastered his independence has also mastered his perception. He has spent enough time with himself to see beyond the surface of others. He notices the intention behind the words. He sees the cracks behind the mask. He recognizes when affection is genuine and when it is only manipulation dressed as care. And because of this clarity, he becomes immune to the games that entangle so many. For many, this can feel unsettling because depth requires vulnerability. It requires honesty. It requires you to show who you are without hiding behind the easy tricks. And that can be uncomfortable, even frightening. But with him, there is no other way. You cannot keep him with attention alone because attention is cheap. You cannot keep him with beauty alone because beauty fades. You cannot keep him with need alone because need repels him. The only thing that will reach him is depth, the depth of your mind, your character, your vision, your truth. And here is the paradox. While this may feel intimidating, it is also liberating, because when you realize that only your authentic self will hold his attention, you no longer have to play roles. You no longer have to act out the exhausting scripts of modern relationships, pretending to be someone you are not, saying what you don't feel, performing love instead of living it. With him, performance collapses, only honesty remains. But make no mistake, this honesty is not easy. It will require you to look at yourself in ways you may have avoided. It will force you to question whether you are offering something real or simply chasing approval. And that is why he is love's challenge, because being with him requires growth. It demands that you step into your own depth, that you rise above the superficiality that most people settle for. So understand this. A man who cannot be captured by games is not hard to love, he is simply hard to deceive. And that is exactly what makes his love worth having. Because when he gives his heart, it will never be out of illusion, but out of truth. And truth, unlike charm or beauty, does not fade. Love, for most people, is about necessity. It is about filling a void, about searching for someone to complete the parts of them they refuse to face. That is why so many cling desperately to relationships that drain them, because without that connection, they fear they are nothing. But for the man who does not need anyone, love is never about necessity. It is never about filling emptiness. He does not approach relationships as a transaction where you give him what he lacks. He is not looking for someone to complete him. He is already whole. And this shifts the entire meaning of love when it comes from him, because when love is not about need, it becomes about choice. And choice is infinitely more powerful. Think about it. If someone stays because they need you, it is not necessarily a reflection of love. It is a reflection of dependency. They are there because they cannot bear the thought of being alone, because they fear losing comfort, or because their identity collapses without your presence. But if someone stays when they don't need you, when they could walk away without hesitation and still live fully, that is a love you can trust. That is a love born not from fear, but from freedom. This is why his love feels so rare. He does not give it lightly, and he does not give it by accident. He chooses deliberately, and when he does, you know it is not because of desperation, but because he sees something in you that is extraordinary. He could live without you, but he decides not to. He could walk alone, but he chooses to walk with you. That choice carries a depth that dependency will never reach. And yet, this makes him love's greatest challenge, because choice demands substance. It demands that you bring something real, something lasting, something that resonates beyond the superficial. He will not hold on to you just because you demand it. He will not stay because you guilt him. He will not sacrifice his essence to soothe your insecurities. If he is there, it is because he wants to be there. And that means you must be someone worth choosing, not just once, but every day. This is where so many fail. They want the strength of a man who does not need anyone, but they do not want the responsibility of being chosen for who they truly are. Because with him, there are no illusions to hide behind. You cannot be passive. You cannot remain stagnant. His love forces you to grow, to rise, to become the kind of person who adds meaning rather than simply takes comfort. So never mistake his independence for a lack of care. It is precisely because he does not need anyone that his love carries such weight. He does not give it because he has to. He gives it because he chooses to. And that is the kind of love that is unshakable. That is the kind of love that endures. The unshakable standard is what sets him apart. Because when a man does not need anyone, he is free from the compromises that weaken most relationships. He does not lower his boundaries to avoid being abandoned. He does not sacrifice his integrity to keep the peace. He does not beg for attention, and he will never plead to be understood. His standard is not arrogance, it is clarity. He knows who he is, he knows what he brings, and he knows what he will never tolerate. And this is why he is love's greatest challenge, because you cannot come to him half prepared. Most people are used to being needed. They rely on that need to justify bad behavior, to cover up neglect, to excuse manipulation. They won't leave me because they can't. But when someone does not need you, that illusion is destroyed. You cannot mistreat him and expect him to stay. You cannot play games and expect him to chase. He does not operate on desperation, so your approval is not his currency. His standard demands honesty, loyalty, and growth. And if those are absent, he will walk away without regret. And this is where many people misunderstand him. They see his refusal to settle as pride. They call his independence coldness. They confuse his boundaries with walls. But in truth, his standard is not about pushing people away. It is about protecting the sacredness of love, because love without standards becomes chaos. Love without boundaries becomes exploitation, and love without integrity becomes a lie. He refuses to participate in lies, no matter how comforting they may appear. This forces anyone who loves him to rise higher, because you cannot win him with shortcuts. You cannot keep him with mediocrity. You cannot expect him to accept less than truth, and if you do not rise, you will lose him, not because he wants to hurt you, but because he refuses to betray himself. That is what makes him unshakable. His loyalty is deep, but it is never blind. His devotion is strong, but it is never unconditional at the cost of his self-respect. And isn't that what real love demands from all of us? To hold ourselves to a standard where love is not about control, not about weakness, but about choice, freedom, depth, and truth. To love in a way that does not destroy us, but elevates us. That is what he embodies. That is why he is so difficult, yet so necessary. Because through him, love is forced back to its purest form. So understand this: the man who needs no one will never be love's easiest path, but he will always be its most authentic test. If you can meet his standard, you will experience a love that is rare, intentional, and unbreakable. And if you cannot, he will let you go without hesitation. Because for him, it is better to walk alone in truth than to stay with someone in a lie.